My name is Clara, 32 years old, and I've carried a wound for 6 years that still aches when I least expect it. I sit in my childhood bedroom, the faded wallpaper a silent witness to my past, clutching an old engagement ring that once symbolized my future. My sister, Tessa, stole my millionaire fiancé, Ethan, shattering my dreams with a smile I once trusted. The pain lingers, but today, as I prepare for Mom's funeral, a new resolve stirs within me. 6 years have passed, and at this gathering, her reaction to my husband will mark the beginning of my quiet revenge. I don't know how it will unfold, but I'm ready to face it. Growing up, Tessa and I were close, despite our differences. I was the practical one, working part-time jobs to save for college, while Tessa, 2 years younger, dazzled with her charm and beauty. Our parents, a hard-working couple in a small town, adored her effortless grace, often overlooking my steady efforts. I studied journalism, landing a modest reporter job, while Tessa flitted through life, relying on their support. Ethan came into my life at 25, a kind, successful tech entrepreneur worth millions. We met at a charity gala, his quiet confidence drawing me in. After a year, he proposed with a ring that sparkled with promise, and I envisioned a life of stability and love. Tessa's betrayal began subtly. She'd visit, flirting with Ethan under the guise of sisterly bonding, her laughter too loud, her touches too familiar. I brushed it off, trusting her, until I found them kissing in our kitchen one night. The ring slipped from my finger as I confronted them, Ethan stammering apologies, Tessa smirking. "He chose me, Clara," she said, her voice cold. Dad defended her, "She's young, let it go," while Mom stayed silent, her eyes avoiding mine. Ethan moved out, marrying Tessa within months, their wedding a lavish affair I didn't attend. I left town, my heart in pieces, taking a job in a distant city. The years were a blur of healing and hustle. I worked long hours, rising to senior editor at a digital magazine, my bylines earning respect. I dated sparingly, guarding my trust, until I met James, a compassionate architect with his own modest success. We married quietly 2 years ago, his support mending my scars. Tessa's life, splashed across social media, showed wealth, private jets, designer gowns, while I built a stable, meaningful existence. Mom's illness brought us back together, her calls pleading for reconciliation. I visited, biting back my resentment, caring for her as she weakened. Mom's death came suddenly last week, a heart attack that left us reeling. The funeral was set for tomorrow, a somber event I couldn't avoid. Tessa's texts were curt, arranging details, her tone as if nothing had happened. I decided to bring James, not just as my husband but as part of my plan. I'd let her see what I'd built without her interference, a silent jab at her stolen victory. I dug through old photos, finding one of Ethan and Tessa's wedding, her smug grin a trigger. I also saved emails from that time, Ethan's apologies, Tessa's taunts, evidence I'd kept buried. At work, I channeled my anger into a feature on sibling rivalry, its subtext mirroring my life. The editor loved it, and it went live, drawing comments about family betrayal. I printed copies, planning to leave them at the funeral as a subtle hint. James supported my idea, suggesting we arrive together, letting Tessa see our bond. I practiced my composure, knowing her reaction would be the first step. The funeral loomed, a stage for my quiet revenge, and I was ready to watch her freeze when she met my husband. The next move would depend on her, but I was prepared to seize it. The morning of Mom's funeral arrived with a gray sky, the air heavy with grief and anticipation. I woke in my old bedroom, the creaky bed a reminder of simpler times, my heart a tangle of sorrow and resolve. The engagement ring sat on the dresser, a relic of betrayal, while James slept beside me, his steady breathing a comfort. Today was more than a goodbye to Mom, it was the day I'd confront Tessa, letting her see the life I'd built without her meddling. Her reaction to my husband would be the first crack in her smug facade, and I was ready to watch it unfold, though the full impact remained a mystery I'd unravel step by step. We dressed in silence, James in a sharp suit, me in a black dress that hid my trembling hands. I packed the printed articles and old emails, tucking them into a discreet folder, a subtle weapon for later. The drive to the church was tense, memories of Mom's laughter mixing with the sting of Tessa's betrayal. James squeezed my hand, his support grounding me. "You are doing the right thing," he murmured, and I nodded, steeling myself. The parking lot was crowded with relatives, their murmurs a backdrop to my focus. Tessa's car, A sleek Mercedes from Ethan's wealth stood out, a symbol of her stolen prize. The service began with a hymn, Mom's favorite, her casket a somber centerpiece. I sat with James, my eyes scanning for Tessa. She entered late, Ethan beside her, her black veil unable to hide her polished elegance. Her gaze met mine, a flicker of surprise, then dismissal, as if I were still the overshadowed sister. Ethan nodded politely, unaware of the history, while Lily, our younger cousin, whispered, "She's brought her new man?" I smiled faintly, waiting for the moment. The eulogy was heartfelt, tears flowing, but my mind raced with a plan. After the service, as mourners mingled, I stood with James, his arm around me, ready to make my move. Tessa approached, her heels clicking. "Clara, sorry about Mom," she said, her tone flat, her eyes darting to James. "This is my husband, James," I introduced, my voice steady. Her smile froze, her gaze locking on him, tall, confident, his quiet success a contrast to Ethan's flashiness. "Husband?" she stammered, her composure cracking. Ethan frowned, stepping closer, but I continued, "Yes, 2 years now. He's an architect, building a future together." Her face paled, the realization dawning that I'd thrived without her interference. Lily giggled, sensing the tension, while aunts murmured behind fans. I handed Tessa a copy of my article, Sibling Rivalry, The Hidden Cost, its subtext clear. She flinched, clutching it, her eyes wide. The confrontation escalated. Ethan pulled her aside, his voice low but audible. "What's this about?" he demanded. Tessa hissed, "She's jealous, always has been," but her hands trembled. I stayed calm, letting the evidence speak. James supported me silently, his presence a statement. Relatives gathered, curiosity piqued, and an uncle asked, "Clara, what's going on?" I explained briefly, "Tessa took my fiancé 6 years ago. I've moved on, built my life." Gasps followed, Dad's face tightening, Mom's absence amplifying the drama. Tessa glared, then stormed off, Ethan trailing, their argument echoing. Later, at the reception, I circulated the folder, emails from Ethan's apologies, Tessa's taunting texts, letting relatives read. An unconfronted dad, "You let this happen?" He muttered, it was their choice, but his discomfort was evident. Lily sided with me, whispering, "She's always been selfish." I recorded the reactions discreetly, a tactic Rachel had taught me, building a narrative. Tessa returned, red-faced, demanding I stop. "You are humiliating us," she snapped. "You did that 6 years ago," I replied, my voice firm. She retreated, Ethan's arm around her, their unity strained. The fallout began immediately. Dad called that night, his tone apologetic. "We didn't know it hurt you this much. Let's talk." I agreed, sensing an opening. Mom's will reading was scheduled for the next day, and I prepared, expecting tension. At the lawyer's office, the will split assets evenly, but a note from Mom requested I receive her antique locket, a symbol she'd favored me with. Tessa's jaw dropped, her freeze deepening. I wore it, a quiet victory, while she fumed silently. The lawyer hinted at a trust fund dispute, suggesting Ethan's influence, and I filed for a review, leveraging my evidence. At work, the article's success grew, my editor proposing a series on betrayal. I recorded a podcast episode, masking my voice, its downloads soaring. Comments praised my strength, some speculating about Tessa. I used the platform to hint at my next step, building anticipation. James suggested a community project with his firm, donating to a women's shelter, turning my pain into purpose. Tessa texted, "Let's meet," her tone desperate, but I delayed, letting her stew. The plan was taking root, a blend of public exposure and personal triumph. Her freeze at the funeral was the start, and I was ready to push further. The will dispute and family talks would be the next phase, and I anticipated their reaction with a mix of dread and excitement. They wouldn't expect the depth of my resolve, and I was prepared to see it through. The days following Mom's funeral were a haze of grief and mounting tension, each morning waking me to the echo of Tessa's frozen expression. I sat in my apartment, the locket from Mom's will resting against my chest, a bittersweet reminder of her quiet favor. The will dispute and family talks loomed large, my plan gaining momentum as Tessa's desperation grew. Her reaction at the funeral had been the spark, and I was ready to fan it into a flame that would force her to face the consequences. The outcome was still uncertain, but I was prepared to see it through. The will reading aftermath stirred the pot. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, called to discuss the trust fund discrepancy. Ethan's name appeared as a co-beneficiary, a move Mom hadn't authorized. I provided my evidence, emails from 6 years ago, Tessa's taunts, suggesting manipulation. Hargrove agreed to investigate, promising a revised distribution. Tessa texted furiously, "Stay out of this." But I ignored her, forwarding the messages to Hargrove. Dad called, his voice strained. "Clara, let's settle this privately." I agreed to a meeting, sensing their unease, and prepared a list of demands, acknowledgement of their role, financial compensation. The family meeting was set for the weekend at a neutral cafe. I arrived with James, his calm presence a contrast to my racing pulse. Dad and Mom sat across from us, Tessa absent, her excuse a headache. Dad opened, "We're sorry, Clara. We didn't see Tessa's influence." Mom nodded, tears welling. I presented my case, loan receipts, therapy bills, the locket's significance, laying out a $40,000 demand to cover my losses. Dad balked, "That's too much," but Mom whispered, "We'll try." They offered $15,000, and I countered with $25,000, plus a public statement. They hesitated, then agreed, their faces paling again. Tessa's retaliation came swiftly. She showed up at my office, uninvited, demanding I drop the will dispute. "You are destroying our family," she hissed, her designer bag a symbol of her privilege. I stood firm, "You destroyed it first." She left, slamming the door, and I found my car scratched, her petty vengeance. I reported it, adding photos to my evidence pile, and James suggested a restraining order. Rachel, my lawyer friend, drafted it, citing harassment, and I filed, the legal pressure mounting. At work, the Betrayal series gained traction, my editor proposing a book deal. I wrote a chapter on sibling theft, its subtext clear, and it drew offers from publishers. The podcast episode hit 75,000 downloads, comments praising my resilience, some speculating about Tessa. I hosted a live session, hinting at a family resolution, building anticipation. James's community project with the women's shelter took off, and I joined, donating my article earnings, turning pain into purpose. The will dispute resolved in my favor. Hargrove confirmed Ethan's addition was fraudulent, redistributing the trust, $20,000 to me, nullifying his claim. Tessa called, sobbing, "Ethan's leaving me." I felt a pang but stayed resolute. Dad mediated a final meeting, where they signed the $25,000 check, reading a statement, "We regret favoring Tessa, apologize to Clara." Relatives witnessed, their nods a validation. Tessa didn't attend, her silence a surrender. My plan was blooming, a mix of legal wins and public exposure. Her freeze at the funeral was the start, and this phase cemented my triumph. The next step would be reconciliation or distance, and I was ready to decide. They wouldn't expect my strength, and I anticipated their next move with cautious hope. The weeks following the family meeting brought a strange calm, the dust settling over the chaos I'd ignited. I woke each morning to the soft chime of my apartment, the locket from Mom's will a warm weight against my skin, a symbol of her silent support. The $25,000 check sat in my account, a tangible victory, but my heart wrestled with the next step, reconciliation or distance. Tessa's freeze at the funeral, her crumbling marriage, and my parents' reluctant apology had set the stage, and I was ready to shape the final act. Their regret was palpable, and I intended to turn it into a lasting lesson, though the full resolution was still unfolding in my mind. The financial settlement eased my burdens. I paid off lingering debts, the relief washing over me like a quiet tide, and invested the rest in a small editing startup with James. His architectural firm partnered with my venture, blending our skills into a shared dream. The office space, a cozy loft with city views, became our sanctuary, a testament to the life I'd built without Tessa's shadow. At work, the book deal for Silent Betrayal materialized, its advance funding a marketing campaign. I wrote late nights, pouring my pain into pages, the narrative resonating with readers who'd faced similar betrayals. The publisher scheduled a launch, a public stage for my triumph. The podcast soared past 100,000 downloads, its latest episode on family redemption drawing tears and praise. I hosted a live Q&A, my modulated voice steady as I shared tips on overcoming sibling rivalry, document evidence, seek support, reclaim your narrative. Comments flooded in, stories of stolen loves and regained strength, their support a balm to my wounds. James suggested a charity tie-in, and we donated proceeds to a domestic abuse shelter, turning my revenge into a broader purpose. Colleagues admired my focus, unaware of the personal stakes, and I mentored a young writer, passing on my resilience. Tessa's life unraveled further. Ethan filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, the tabloids buzzing with rumors of her extravagance. She called, her voice broken. "Clara, he's gone. Help me." I listened, my heart softening but my resolve firm. "You made your choices, Tessa. Seek help, but I can't fix this." She sobbed, admitting she'd manipulated Ethan, her charm a tool she'd overplayed. I recorded the call, a legal safeguard, and shared it with Rachel, who advised against escalation unless necessary. Tessa's texts dwindled, her silence a sign of defeat. My parents sought reconciliation. Dad visited, bringing a photo album he'd compiled, my childhood achievements, once ignored, now highlighted. "We were wrong, Clara," he said, his eyes wet. Mom followed, offering a quilt she'd made, a gesture of amends. I accepted both, inviting them to the office launch, a neutral ground to rebuild. They met James, their surprise at his kindness genuine, and apologized publicly during the event. Relatives attended, their nods of validation, and I felt a shift, tentative trust replacing old wounds. The will dispute's final resolution came with a letter from Hargrove. The trust was adjusted, adding $10,000 to my share, acknowledging Mom's intent. Tessa received a reduced portion, her fraud exposed, and Ethan's claim was voided. I donated half to the shelter, the rest bolstering my startup. Lily, our cousin, became an ally, sharing Tessa's past manipulations, strengthening my narrative. We planned a family dinner, excluding Tessa for now, a step toward healing. One evening, I found Tessa's old locket, a twin to mine, in a box Mom had left. Inside was a note, "For Clara, my quiet strength." Tears fell as I wore both, a dual symbol of Mom's love and my victory. I framed the check and apology, hanging them beside my awards, a gallery of my journey. Reflecting, my revenge wasn't about destruction, it was about restoration. Tessa's theft broke my heart, but my strategy, patience, proof, and purpose, mended it. Her freeze at the funeral was the start, their pale faces the climax, and this was my redemption. If you faced sibling betrayal, this is for you. Share below. Subscribe to Revenge Tempest for more triumph tales, and hit the bell for updates. Until next time.